Welcome back to Beyond the Headline, everyone. It's a really exciting day because I'm here with the founder and CEO of Getaway, Jon Stapp. Jon, thank you for being here.
Glad to be here, thanks.
I'd love to start out with an introduction to what Getaway is and how it works because like I shared, I'm a little mind-boggled by this.
Yeah, so Getaway designs tiny houses, places them in the woods, and rents them out by the night to what I call stressed out city dwellers looking to disconnect and recharge. For us, it's really a wellness experience, even more than a hospitality experience. It's all about like, my phone's ringing too much, I'm getting too many emails, I'm sick of my boss, I need to get out of the city for a short period of time. And so we try to just be that escape hatch that you can pull when you need to.
Why do you call it the anti-vacation?
So we sat down and we thought about how technology and work are now filling, every hour of the day, every day of the week, every week of the year, which is great. Like, we like technology, we like our jobs, we're glad they're more flexible, we like the city, but it's a change, and most societal changes need a reaction. And so, the way we used to go on vacation is we spent a lot of money to go somewhere far away, where there was a bunch of stuff we wanted to see and do, and we would do that once a year for a week or two. And that was okay when we, had a mini vacation built into every day after 5 or 6 p.m., but we don't have that anymore. And so what do we do to balance that? So we kind of think about Getaway as the anti-vacation, meaning it's far enough away that you feel disconnected, but near enough that you don't spend all your time getting there. It's affordable, starting at $99 a night, and it's designed really for you to do nothing at all, so you can just disconnect and recharge.
Can you share some details on the experience of, what would happen once I booked my trip?
Sure. So you book the trip through our website. You stay in one of these tiny houses that we've sort of handcrafted for exactly this experience. We've designed and built really beautiful houses just around the idea of disconnecting and recharging in the woods. There's a campfire pit there. There's a barbecue grill. There's a fire ring. And we like to say it's designed for you to do nothing at all. That's not totally true. We just want you to stop doing the things that all of us type A people do, like check our email every 30 seconds. And to that end, we hope that you'll just stay there in the house on the land. But we've given you an activity book. So instead of checking your email, try to find these 4 birds or those 4 trees, or look for these constellations in the sky. Those things that we just are too quick to skip over, but are really actually quite restorative if you take a few minutes to do them.
And everything's totally equipped, right? So I just show up.
Yeah, it's kind of like a hotel room in the woods. So there's the beds are made with comfortable mattresses. There's some simple food there, so you can make meals, a 2-burner stove, hot and cold running water, a shower. So you should be able to just run away from your cubicle and be in the woods pretty quickly.
I'd love to rewind just for a couple of minutes too and chat about the genesis of this for you and your team.
Yeah, so this is a really personal project for a lot of us, and a bunch of people on the team did startup companies before that we really enjoyed, but at least for me, this is the one I'm most deeply connected to, because this is something I wanted to do. And in part that's because I grew up in a very rural place, originally a town of 54 people, which is now 29 people.
Oh, wow.
And I love campfires and looking at the stars and being in the woods. But I've lived in the city for the last 10 years, and I love what the city has, culture and restaurants and museums and life. And it doesn't make that much sense to me that we have this kind of urban-rural cultural divide, that you're either a city person or you're a country person, but you can't be the other person or you don't like the other person. I think both places are great, and we should be able to spend more time in both places. So that's part of the genesis. I also lived in a bunch of weird places. So I lived on a boat. Growing up, I lived in an Airstream trailer for a long time. I lived illegally in a library. I lived in the basement of this yogurt shop I opened. So I kind of got the tiny lifestyle and wanted to help bring it to more folks.
I really was excited to hear about some of your experiences on both ends of the spectrum. What was the most exciting and what was the craziest?
In terms of living?
In terms of living.
Yeah, so so I lived in this library while we were renovating this yogurt shop my roommate and I opened in college. And of course it wasn't allowed. There were some student offices. We somehow negotiated access, saying we were working on projects, and we just slept there for 3 months. And so I slept in one of these student offices, yeah. My buddy slept in another one, and then somehow my parents, who helped like renovate this yogurt shop with us, came out, and I somehow convinced them, and they stayed there for 3 weeks in this library. So it was totally bizarre. I can't believe we did it. I can't believe my parents did it. Um, but it's a great memory. And the hardest part of that was that even with the like swipe access we negotiated, it ended at 11 p.m. So any night we wanted to stay out, we had to like block the door open and hope it would be open when we got back from having beers or whatever.
Oh, wow. I was definitely not expecting that.
Yeah, I mean, crazy. Wouldn't do it again, but was a fun thing to do when we were 20, 21, or 22.
How about one of your favorite experiences that when you look back on, the last decade really stick out to you?
When I got into graduate school, which was in Boston, I'd already been living in Boston, so I knew by the time I graduated, I would have been here for 10 years. And I had a little bit of time where I was working remotely and figured I might as well get out of town for a while. And I just started lying to people and saying I was going to live in an Airstream trailer, these silver bullet trailers, and travel the West. And I lied to enough people that someone just said, well, do you have one? And I said, no. And this person said, well, I've got a friend with one. So that friend gave me her Airstream trailer. And I said, well, I better go on this trip I've been telling people I was going to do now. And I spent 5 months traveling around the West through Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Montana, Oregon, and then down the California coast. And it was incredible, and it was one of these experiences. I was living in this very small space, but that freed me up to spend all of my time and money kind of experiencing the country and meeting people and not worrying about the things you worry about when you have a mortgage or a high rent payment or whatever.
At what point did you realize that you wanted to go back and start Getaway?
Well, that trip, when I was living in this Airstream trailer traveling the West, I both discovered the tiny house and realized I needed to figure out a job for myself that allowed me to create things and build companies, which I've always liked, but be in nature, be working on something tangible and providing a real experience to people.
That is crazy. So, as I was sharing, I wasn't familiar with the tiny house movement, and I'd love to go back into your team and your overarching goal. You mentioned that you're a wellness company, not a hospitality company. In the long term, what does that mean to you?
Well, so the tiny house movement, to answer your first question, is all about living in much smaller spaces. So our tiny houses, for example, are 160 square feet. They range, you see some as small as 80 square feet up to maybe 225, 250 square feet. And it's definitely about being small, but more than that, it's about reprioritizing how you use your resources. So, instead of spending all of your money on a mortgage and all of your time kind of maintaining and cleaning your house, instead save that and put that money and that time into creating experiences and spending time with people, as opposed to just collecting more and more stuff and all the stress that comes with it. So that's the tiny house movement in general. We've used tiny houses to create this wellness experience, which is here's an affordable, environmentally friendly, kind of interesting way to get into nature really quickly. And we think that's important because the way the world's changed, we need ways to disconnect and recharge. And so for us, being a wellness company means more than this is about going to some rural town to see what's there. It's about how do you just exit your daily grind and disconnect and recharge. So it's, we compare ourselves much more to a spa or meditation or yoga or a massage or binge watching Netflix than even travel.
And how have you seen people continually respond to that? Because it seems to be overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah, we've been really blown away by this response. I mean, we've basically been sold out since we launched last July. And it's really touching, right? We get these notes from people that say, like, I can't remember the last time I had a real adventure or did something that's spontaneous or, was able to just kind of let go and disconnect and de-stress. But the ones I really love are the honest people. And the honest people will say, I got there and you told me to put my phone away and I did and I was mad at you. And I didn't know what to do with myself for like the first 3 hours and I felt totally anxious. But then after 3 hours, it just kind of melted away, and I felt like better than I have in months or years, because the condition was created for me to just kind of be in a different mind space than I was before.
And the response has inspired your team to expand. So, started in Boston, now you're heading to New York in June, and those are already also sold out, right?
Well, yeah, Boston, our houses outside of Boston have been basically sold out ever since launch, and it's hard to get a night to the point where it's frustrating to me and frustrating to customers about our lack of availability. And we've just launched New York, and those are booking up quickly also.
That is crazy. And you guys are heading to New York in June. What's your plan going forward? I know you guys have expansion plans. How are you identifying the right places to go and when to go?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been overwhelmed by the response we've received, so we're trying to go as quickly as we can without messing up the secret sauce. And because we get, I mean, literally thousands of emails from people all over the country and all over the world saying, we need this outside of my city. And so when we started out, we said, well, we think this is just for, or best for like stressed out cities. But the thing is, we're getting emails from everywhere, and beyond that, we're getting people coming from everywhere, right? So everybody coming to our houses outside of Boston aren't from Boston. They're from, many of them are from rural New Hampshire and Vermont and rural Massachusetts, and they're still, escaping because I think we all just benefit from, kind of disconnecting from our day-to-day lives.
So, specifically, then, Jon, as really one of the pioneers in this aspect of the tiny house movement, how do you, as a founder, approach growth? Having been this is the fifth startup you're in, right?
Yeah, depends on how you count, but yeah, I did 3 venture-backed startups before and helped on a few other projects.
So, how does that experience inform you as you move forward here, especially with such high demand?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, for me, it's, I occasionally get asked for entrepreneurship type advice, and it's hard because it all sounds like cliches, and some of these things are lessons you just have to learn yourself. For me, the biggest thing is, I'm building a company that I really love and want to exist in the world and want to succeed. And I think that's the most important thing. And the byproduct of that is growth and expansion are really important. And we've, set the company up to grow. But I care so much about it, and the team cares so much about it that like we won't grow at the risk of messing up this thing we've created. So, in thinking about growth, it's a constant balance between, getting this out to more people who we want to have access to it, and making sure we're protecting it and being really careful about, maintaining the consistency of the experience and product we want to provide.
As you reflect on those experiences well in different parts of life now as a founder, what are some of the core, leadership lessons that help shape your direction as you build this team? Is anything different this time around?
The thing that I'm trying to do and the team is helping me with is the most important thing, I think, is that we only allow people into the company that really get what we're doing and really care about what we're doing. And so we meet a lot of folks who perhaps have more experience or might even be more intelligent than us or whatever, that if we can't convince ourselves they really get it and really care about what we're doing, then we don't let them into the company in the same way we would somebody else. And that's hard to do because, every startup's fighting for survival. And so it's hard to say no to somebody who's really traditionally qualified. But I think it's really important. The other thing we're doing is just becoming closer and closer as a team, to the extent that we're all moving in together this summer. And so we're launching in New York. We've leased an old, basically abandoned house near where our getaway houses will be launching, and we'll all have a bedroom and we'll live and work there. So we're doing a sort of version of the like Facebook, let's all live in a house together, but instead of coding, we're going to be like walking the trails and ensuring our guests have a good time.
How do you promote the values that you have for Getaway as a company of detaching and getting in touch with nature internally for your team? Because you might have a great vision, but you're still a startup. There's a lot to do.
No, it's a real challenge to maintain that culture because we are about disconnecting and charging, and we believe deeply in that you need to have balance. And nonetheless, we're a startup, and so there's just always more to do, and there's always things that pop up. And so, the honest answer is we haven't gotten it totally right yet. And that, we built this company in part because we needed and wanted to disconnect and recharge. And now we're sold out, so we can't go to our own houses to disconnect and recharge. And when we do go, we're so close to it that we make long lists of all the things we want to, fix and add on. So we haven't got it totally right yet, but we do really try to provide a lot of flexibility and trust each other to, do the right thing in terms of, both getting your job done, but also do the right thing in terms of taking care of yourself. Like, you don't have to ask anybody permission to, take some time to yourself or whatever. And, and we're all moving to the woods together. So, I think that's going to be a key to being close to our business and close to our customer. The thing I emphasize with that is, again, as a startup, there's also problems that come up with our service offering, and, we'll have little hiccups here and there. And the really good news is that, after we launched, the feedback on the concept has been almost universally positive, right? Like, people go there and they love it, whereas, it'd be worrisome to me if people paid us money and they came back and they said I was bored, or it wasn't that good, or I didn't like it, or the trees were ugly, or something like that.
Oh, no.
That never happens. But what does happen
I hope
sometimes
not.
is we mess something up, and like a bed wasn't made, or we forgot to leave firewood or something, and we feel terrible about that. And so the thing I emphasize with the team all the time is, like, people have paid us their hard-earned money, and all they want to do is just not worry about a thing, right? Like, they don't want to see a human, they don't want to send a text message, they don't want to, like, be confused. And so that's the experience we're always striving to provide, is just how do we let people just totally not have a worry, if only for 12 or 24 hours.
On that note, and it relates similarly as we've been discussing, you guys being the pioneer in this space, how do you sit back as a founder and as a team as a whole and say, what could we be doing better? Are we missing anything here?
Well, it's a real challenge, and the big one for us is there's so many things we want to do, right? Because we've hit on something that we really care about, and that thing has many different arms and legs to it. And we're, like, going down one of those paths with Getaway, tiny houses in the woods for short-term rental. But there are a bunch of other things we're excited about, and we'd love to work on, housing in the city, be that tiny houses or otherwise. We'd love to work on kind of rotational housing for, freelancers or remote workers or whatever. We'd love to go deeper into Getaway and provide, retreat center type amenities and classes and yoga retreats and stuff like that. And so, it's a pretty classic startup challenge of, how do we balance pursuing what could be an opportunity versus, the risk of losing focus and becoming distracted. And so that's something we're always balancing, and I'm not always sure we're getting the balance right. But it's something we think about a lot. But on the core business, on the Getaway core business, the most important thing is the guest experience. And that provides a lot of discipline, because if we can look at the guest experience and say, okay, there's something here that's not 5 stars yet, which we've had to come to terms with, right? Like, to some extent, we're a startup and we're going to have to dial things in a little bit over time. And so until anything's 5 stars, it's really hard to justify taking on something else. And so that's sort of kept us, between the guardrails so far.
Before we go, can you share any of the projects or ideas that you guys have for moving forward? Because I imagine they're super interesting.
Well, I mean, we'd love to. We've had a bunch of inbound interest from cities, which has been interesting, saying we're worried about affordability and we're worried about the environment. We're worried about keeping young, creative people in our cities, and tiny houses seem like they might be a solution to some of those problems. So we've been talking to some cities about, how could cities adapt to allow, either tiny houses or smaller living or both. We haven't figured out exactly what the project is yet, but I think there's a ton of opportunity there, and we could solve some real problems together. The other one that we haven't been as deeply involved in, but I think is super promising, is tiny houses for people suffering from homelessness. I just think there's a lot of opportunity to really improve a lot of people's lives And all of those things fit together in a certain way, right? Like getting somebody into a tiny house in the woods for a night improves your life in a certain way. Getting somebody who doesn't have a home into a tiny house, so they have the basic necessities of life to get by, is clearly helping them out in another way. So, we're just eager to contribute to whatever of those problems and solutions we can, and we wish we had more capacity to do them all, because I think they're all important and they're all fun.
So really, it's just the tip of the iceberg then.
That's what we hope.
I hope so too, and I can't wait to try one of the getaway experiences. For everyone who's also excited about that, what's the best way for them to stay up to date with you, find out when you're coming to their city and all of that?
Best way to stay up to date with us is to check out our website, which is getaway.house, and sign up for our newsletter or follow us on Facebook or Instagram.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thanks, Jenna. This was fun.